Hey guys, this is Tearless here. I am at the very end of the final beta weekend for Heart of Thorns, the expansion pack for Guild Wars 2 that will be released very soon. And before the beta weekend ends, I thought I would go through and take a look at the specializations, the different talent trees for the Revenant, the brand new profession that's being added to the game in Heart of Thorns. So it's the only part of the Revenant that I haven't really gone over, so we'll just go tree at a time and show you what they can do. The first tree here is Devastation, and the first minor talent is Mutilate Defenses. Striking a foe gives you a chance to apply vulnerability, trigger chance 25%. In the first tree, we have Ferocious Strikes, gain increased ferocity while dual-wielding weapons. So that would be either sword, sword, axe, or mace, axe, mace, sword. The second one is Vicious Lacerations. When you attack while wielding a sword, gain a stack of Vicious Laceration. This can be stacked up to 5 times, so up to about a 10% damage buff. And then the third is Malicious Reprisal. When one of your attacks is blocked, your next attack will be unblockable, or your next attacks will be unblockable. That's one word full right there. So 2 attacks, it looks like, will be unblockable after one of your attacks is blocked. So those are the first 3. The second minor is Targeted Destruction. Deal increased damage to targets with vulnerability. So that works well with the first one, considering that you will be able to trigger vulnerability a lot. And then you have the damage increase here of 7%. In the second grouping of trees, we have a Jade Echo. When Jade Winds, use Jade Winds when you are downed. Deal increased damage while downed. And Jade Winds, if you remember, call upon the Jade Wind to turn nearby enemies into Jade, stunning them for a short duration. This is one of the utility skills for the assassin tree of Shiro Tagachi. I can't remember exactly which one, but it is definitely one of, it might even be, it's the ultimate. So you have basically a free ultimate in this ability right here. It is on a 90-second cooldown though, so you know that. Nefarious Momentum, gain might when using Assassin Stance skills. And then Assassin's Presence, increase the ferocity of nearby allies. The third minor is going to be Focused Siphoning. When you strike foes that have vulnerability, siphon life from them. And then the last tree, or the last grouping of tree here, first is Swift Termination, increase damage to targets below the health threshold, so that's 20%. Our health threshold is actually 50%, damage increases 20%, so that's actually pretty awesome. Dismantle Fortification, skills that disable foes, stun, daze, knockback, pull, knockdown, sink, float, fear, launch, or taunt. Remove an additional stack of stability, so that's actually pretty cool. And then Assassin's Annihilation, siphon life from foes when hitting a foe from behind or side. This tree, the Devastation tree, is very much tied to the Assassin stance. Very much tied to the stance. So, I mean, you can see it all throughout it, whether it be the Vicious Lacerations, the two-handed Malicious Reprisal right here. It's using the phase traversal, basically. So it takes from some of the talents down here, even we saw Jade Winds throughout the tree, so it relies heavily on the assassin stance of Shiro Tagachi. The next tree here is going to be Retribution, and the first minor talent is Enduring Recovery. Chance when struck to gain endurance, trigger chance 50%, endurance gain 25. In your first tree we have Planar Protection, create a field of mists when you take damage from falling, take less damage from falling. And its Dome of Mist, create an area that blocks projectiles and weakens foes. I believe this comes from the Centaur stance, I could be wrong. Something like this. It's somewhat like this Protective Solace. The second ability is Close Quarters. Foes that strike you from farther away than the range threshold deal less damage. So damage reduced by 10% for everyone outside of almost your melee range. So that's actually pretty decent. Improved aggression. Taunted foes deal less damage to you. Taunt has increased duration when applied to a non-player character. Your second minor is unwavering avoidance. Gain stability after you dodge. So if you are trying to push your way through a pack on World v World, this ends up being pretty useful right here. Eye for an eye. When disabled by a foe with stun, daze, knockback, pull, knockdown, taunt, float, fear, launch, or sink, taunt that foe for a short duration and gain protection. The second of the tree here, retaliatory evasion. Gain retaliation after you dodge. And the third one is Dwarven Battle Training. Chance on hit to apply weakness to your foe. Incoming weakness applied to you has decreased effectiveness. The third minor talent is Determined Resolution. Take reduced damage below the health threshold. So, health threshold at 75%, you automatically start taking 10% less damage. That's pretty awesome. The last of the final tree, or the first of the final tree, is going to be Empowering Vengeance. Gain might when struck under the effects of retaliation. So that works well with this talent right here. The second one is Reflexive Summon. And chance on hit to spawn a destructive hammer. Invoke the hammer to circle around you, inflict damage and weakness on impacted targets. Excuse me, that was really having trouble with words here. That's somewhat similar to Vengeful Hammers that you have here in the Dwarf stance. And then last you have Steadfast Rejuvenation, chance when struck to heal yourself. So this tree is somewhat, Retribution tree is a little bit tied to the Jalus Iron Hammer stance, the Dwarf stance. Not nearly as much as the Assassin stance is tied to Devastation, but still very close similarities there. Corruption is the third tree here that I have. You have a Rampant Vex. Critical hits have a chance to cause torment. 33% chance there. Replenishing Despair. Incoming conditions provide you a small amount of healing. Demonic Defiance. Using a legendary demon stance skill grants resistance for a short duration. Resistance. And then the last one is Venom Enhancement. When you apply Torment, you also apply Poison. Poison lasts longer. The second minor is Opportune Extraction. Striking a foe gives you a chance to remove a boon from that foe. Chance on hit 50%, that's pretty good. On your next tree here, your middle tree, the first one here is Bolstered Anguish. Increased damage for every condition you currently on you. So this is already playing very well into the demon stance of Malix the Unyielding, because that is all about having conditions on you and healing through those conditions and mitigating those conditions. Frigid Precision, a chance to chill your foe when you land a critical hit. And then Spontaneous Destruction, use Banish Enchantment when striking a foe that has boons equal to or greater than the threshold. Banish Enchantment, I believe, was down here. Yes, right here. So once again, ties in this tree, Corruption tree, ties in very heavily to this Malix stance that you have, the demon stance. The third minor right here is Torment lasts longer. Yearning Empowerment, Torment lasts longer. Remember that the first ability for the mace grants Torment, so you're going to be applying Torment all over the place. Diabolic Inferno, burn nearby foes when using an elite skill. So if you remember, this elite skill is actually it's a channeled one that you can continue to use. I mean, I can use it right here and it'll continue to use, and that's pulsing, so I'm able to pulse out burning as well if I have Diabolic Inferno on, so that's pretty cool. The second one is Maniacal Persistence. Increase your critical hit chance every few seconds. This bonus is reset when you land a critical hit. And then last is Pulsating Pestilence. Chance when struck to copy all conditions currently on you to nearby foes for a few seconds. So considering that you're trying to gather conditions on you in Malix's stance, Being able to do that for a few seconds is, actually a pretty damaging ability right there. So, Corruption ties entirely into the demon stance for the demon Malix the Unyielding, very much like Devastation tied into the stance for Shiro Tagachi the Assassin stance. The other two trees we're going to look at are Invocation. I'm going to go ahead and just choose 3 random talents so it won't blink at me. The Invocation tree, we have Invoker's Rage, gain Fury when you invoke a legend. Cruel Repercussion. When one of your attacks is negated, your next attack will deal bonus damage. Cleansing Channel. Invoking a legend removes 1 condition. And then Fierce Infusion, using a healing skill, grants you Fury. Your second minor is going to be Ferocious Aggression. Deal increased damage to targets while you have Fury. The middle tree here, Equilibrium. Invoking a legend triggers a burst from the mist that heals allies if your energy is below the threshold, or damages foes if your energy is above the threshold. Now, it's talking about this threshold, this 50% threshold. So, if it is above that threshold, you will damage, and then if your energy is below, you will heal yourself. Invigorating Flow, heal yourself when you use a skill that has an energy cost. And then Incensed Response, gain Fury when you break out of a stun. The third minor is Empty Vessel. Invoking a legend will now break stuns. So every time you switch between these two, you will break out of a stun. The first of the last talent tree here is Rolling Mist. Critical hit chance has increased effectiveness when you are under the effect of Fury. And Fury, Fury is always nice to have. It's a 20% increased critical hit chance. So having effectiveness increased by 100% is pretty awesome. Charged Miss, gain might when you use a skill that drops your energy below the threshold. And then the last one here is Shrouding Mist. While your energy is above the threshold, your outgoing healing is increased, while your energy below the threshold incoming damage to you is reduced. So it's very much kind of like this talent right here. It depends on where your energy, this tree is all about energy management and your stance management. So if that's kind of the game you want to play, switching back and forth between stances, this is the kind of tree you want to be in. The Invocation tree. Last tree we need to look at is Salvation. So pick these in so they stop blinking at me. The first one here is Disarming Riposte. Striking a foe while they are using a skill blinds them. The first of the tree is Nourishing Roots. Grant regeneration to allies near Ventari's tablet. Blinding Truth blinds nearby foes when you use a healing skill. And then Tranquil Balance, while above the health threshold, healing to allies is increased. The second minor right here is Hardened Foundation. Gain toughness based on a percentage of your healing power. In the second tree, we have Tranquil Benediction. The healing orbs that you create while wielding a staff will now grant swiftness and regeneration when picked up by allies. If you remember the staff number 1, every time you hit on your third hit, you began to spawn healing orbs. That is what it is in reference to. Eluding Nullification. Dodge rolling removes a condition from nearby allies. And Invoking Harmony. Healing done to allies is increased for a short duration after invoking a legend. Serene Rejuvenation is the third talent in this tree, and it increased healing effectiveness by 15%. If you haven't noticed yet, this tree is tied very heavily into the Centaur stance or the Ventari stance. In the final tree here, we have Selfless Amplification. Increased outgoing healing based on a percentage of healing power. Second one here is Natural Abundance. Create energy fragments around Ventari's tablet when using a legendary Centaur stance skill. And then the last is Momentary Pacification. Daze nearby foes when using an elite skill. So that is all of the talent trees for a Revenant coming in Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns when it release. If you didn't notice, there's 6 trees. One of them is an elite specialization tree. Out of the other 5 trees, all 4 of them line up with one of these stances, with the exception of one, that is the invocation tree, I believe it was. No, sorry. Yes, it was the invocation tree. The invocation tree is the only one, and the invocation tree deals more with, switching back and forth to, different stances. So let's say you really like Malix. You like the condition, destroying of Malix, and that's the kind of thing that you want to do. What you can do is you can, make that your primary stance and try and stay in that stance all the time, and you'll have corruption equipped, of course. And then you can have invocation so that I can even further buff the damage that you can do in that stance. So really it's kind of a choice of, do I want to be a herald? Do I not want to be a herald? And then from there, if you say you don't want to be a herald, you choose invocation, and then you choose the 2 stances that you would prefer to be in, and you switch back and forth between them to do as much damage as possible. But that is everything dealing with the specialization talent trees for the Revenant in Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. I have had fun playing the Revenant. I know everyone else will. There will be a lot of Revenants out there, I'm sure. Right from the beginning, it's a lot of fun to play, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. Tearless out.